I want to tell you about the pattern I noticed 2 years into my marriage. Not a dramatic pattern, not something that announced itself, something quiet, consistent, the kind of thing that is easy to explain away once and twice and 3 times and only becomes impossible to explain away when you add them all together and realize that coincidence does not operate on a monthly schedule. My husband, Daniel, traveled for work. This was established before we married. He was a regional sales manager, territory that covered 4 states, clients that required FaceTime, a job that meant overnight trips were normal and unremarkable. I had made peace with the travel long before I had reason to question it. What I noticed in year 2 was not the travel, it was the pattern within the travel. Every month, not every month coincidentally, but every month with the regularity of a calendar entry, Daniel was gone for 3 days. Not at the end of the month, not at the beginning, always the second week, Tuesday through Thursday, without variation.
I noticed in October of our second year. We were sitting at dinner, an ordinary Wednesday, which meant Daniel was traveling, and I was going through the calendar for the following month to plan something for my mother's birthday. I looked at November, and then, for reasons I cannot fully explain, the specific instinct of a person whose subconscious has been working on something their conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet, I looked at October, and September, and August, and every month going back 14 months. Second week, Tuesday through Thursday, every single time. I closed the calendar app, picked up my fork, finished my dinner, and said nothing, because saying nothing is what you do when you need time to think. I spent 2 weeks thinking, not obsessively, not with the frantic energy of a woman who has already decided what she is going to find. Methodically, I went back through Daniel's travel records, the ones he shared with me casually, the ones I had never had reason to examine carefully. The second week trips were always logged as client visits, different clients each time, different cities, but always Tuesday through Thursday, always the second week. I thought about the Daniel I knew, attentive, present, the man who texted when he landed and called every evening and brought me something small from every city he visited because he knew I collected the specific kind of small things that other people considered impractical. That man was real, I had no doubt about that, but real people can contain things you have not yet found, and patterns do not create themselves.
I decided to follow him on a Tuesday in November. Not impulsively. I had thought about it for 6 weeks. I had considered every alternative, asking him directly, hiring someone, letting it go, trusting what I knew about him and releasing the pattern as coincidence. I could not release it as coincidence. It was too precise, too consistent. 2 years of monthly 3-day disappearances to the same window of the calendar did not happen by accident. Something was there, and I needed to see it with my own eyes before I could decide what to do with it. I told Daniel I was visiting my college friend Priya that weekend, which I was. I called Priya first, explained the bare minimum, and she covered for me without asking questions, because she was the kind of friend who understood that some things required action before explanation. Tuesday morning I watched Daniel pack his bag, the same bag he always packed, efficient, organized, the specific packing of a man who has done something so many times it no longer requires thought. He kissed me at the door. "Back Thursday," he said. "I know," I said, and I smiled, and watched his car pull out of the driveway, and waited 20 minutes. Then I got in my car. I had put a tracker on his car 3 weeks earlier. I am not proud of that, but I am also not ashamed of it. When a pattern has been running for 2 years and every explanation feels insufficient, you stop asking permission for the tools you need. The tracker showed me a route I recognized, toward the highway, toward the city 40 minutes from our house. Then it stopped. Not at a hotel, not at a client's office, at a residential address in a neighborhood I had never been to. I drove there slowly, parked half a block away, and watched. Daniel's car was in the driveway. I sat in my car for 40 minutes, breathing, in through my nose, out through my mouth. The way you breathe when you are preparing to see something you have been both looking for and hoping not to find. At 11:15, the front door of the house opened. Daniel came out, with a child, a little boy, 4 years old, maybe 5, dark hair, Daniel's specific way of walking, the slight forward lean that I had always found endearing. Daniel lifted the boy onto his shoulders, the boy laughed, and the sound of it, carried across half a block on a Tuesday morning in November, was the most devastating thing I had ever heard, because it was the laugh of a child who was completely loved by the man lifting him, and I was the wife who didn't know this child existed. I drove home. I don't remember the drive. I know I made it because I arrived, and I know I didn't stop anywhere because there was nowhere I could have stopped that would have made any difference. I sat in my driveway for an hour. Then I went inside, made tea I didn't drink, sat at the kitchen table where Daniel and I had eaten 1,000 ordinary meals, and looked at the wall. The specific blankness of a mind that has received something too large to process immediately. My friend Dana called at 2, standard Tuesday check-in. We had a standing arrangement. I answered because not answering would have required explaining later, and I wasn't ready to explain anything yet. She heard my voice. 3 seconds of silence. "What happened?" she said. Not a question. "I followed him," I said. "And?" I told her about the house, the driveway, Daniel's car, the little boy on his shoulders, the laugh. Dana was quiet for a long time. "How old?" she finally asked. 4, maybe 5. More silence. "Emily," she said. "I know," I said. "What do you need?" "Time," I said. "I need time to think before I do anything." "Okay," she said. "I'm here." Daniel came home Thursday evening, the same as always. Bag in the hall, kiss on my cheek, "Missed you." I made dinner. We ate. He told me about a client meeting, a meeting I now knew had lasted perhaps 2 hours of his 3-day absence. I nodded, asked follow-up questions, performed the specific theater of a woman who does not know what she knows. I was very good at it, because I had decided, sitting at that kitchen table on Tuesday afternoon, that I was going to be prepared before I was honest. Honesty without preparation is just chaos, and I needed this to be precise. I spent 3 weeks preparing. I called an attorney on Wednesday, Margaret Collins, family law specifically. She listened to everything. "Before we discuss strategy," she said, "I need to ask you something." "Ask," I said. "What do you want the outcome to be?" I thought about this. "I want the truth," I said, "all of it, before I decide anything else." "Then we start with documentation," she said. I confronted Daniel on a Saturday morning, 3 weeks after I had followed him. 3 weeks of documentation, of attorney consultations, of building a picture of what I knew and what I needed to know, and what I intended to do with all of it. I placed 3 things on the kitchen table. A photograph, taken from my car that Tuesday, Daniel and the boy, clear enough to be undeniable. A printed record of 26 months of second week Tuesday through Thursday travel, and a letter from Margaret's office. Daniel came downstairs in his weekend clothes. He saw the table. He stopped, and for the first time in our marriage, I watched his composure fail completely. "Emily." "Sit down," I said. He sat. He told me everything. Not because I demanded it, because the photograph was already sitting between us, and there was nowhere left to go. The boy's name was Eli. He was 4 years old. His mother, a woman named Sarah, had been in Daniel's life before we met, a relationship he had ended that had resumed briefly 2 months after our wedding. Eli had been born when we had been married for 8 months. Daniel had found out when Eli was 6 weeks old and had been spending the second week of every month with his son for the 3.5 years since. 3.5 years of breakfasts and school drop-offs and birthday mornings and all the small accumulated evidence of a father's love, while I was the wife who didn't know Eli existed.
Why? I asked. Not, why did you do this? Why didn't you tell me? He looked at his hands. I was afraid, he said. Of what? Of losing you, he said. I looked at him for a long moment. You lost me the day you decided I didn't deserve the truth, I said. Everything after that was just waiting for me to find out. He didn't respond. There was nothing to respond to. It was simply true. The divorce took 9 months. Clean on some things, complicated on others. Eli was not my complication to manage. He was a child who had not chosen any of this, and I made sure that my anger at Daniel never touched my understanding of that. Margaret was precise and efficient, and the settlement reflected 26 months of documented deception. People ask me if I think about Eli. Sometimes, not with anger, with something more complicated. He is a child who exists, who is loved by his father, who had no part in any of the choices that brought me to a residential driveway on a Tuesday morning in November. What I think about more is the pattern, 26 months of second-week Tuesdays, and the version of myself who noticed, who said nothing while she thought, who followed when she was ready, who prepared before she was honest. That woman saved herself. Not loudly, not dramatically, not with the explosive confrontation of someone who has lost control. Quietly, methodically, with the specific patience of a person who understood that clarity was worth waiting for. I am still that woman, and she is, I have decided, exactly who I want to be.